the infinite presence. Did you know that we are each wired for that connection to the infinite? Hardwired for the activity of God, even if sometimes we forget. My journey in life with God has often been trying to find this balance between enjoying the rich human experience of living and knowing that there is a transcendent thing happening way beyond the edges of my physical body, of my human understanding and intellect, way beyond what I can touch and know physically in the human experience. We are a transcendent aspect of God. Jesus spoke several times in the scripture of being in the world but not of it. Being fully engaged in your human existence, your life, your experience, compassion, empathy, delight, and joy. Coping with the activities of life, enjoying the experiences of life, but not too wrapped up in it, so that we become more connected to the physical life and its delights and its temptations, but knowing that we have the capacity to live fully as the divine, self-created image of God. We are that essence. We may be clothed in this human body. We may be having a human experience that can be full of tribulation, challenge, difficulty, as well as the joys and the delights. But we are still a transcendent divine being because it is hardwired into our neural capacity. There's a fascinating field, has been coined neurotheology, that has been developed over the last 20 years or so by a number of researchers who are medical doctors and biologists, neuroscientists, who have been expanding the understanding of what it is to be both human and is there a divine effect going on in our human experience. They are refining the description of our human nature being that of one of giving meaning to everything in life. We are, someone coined the phrase, meaning-making machines. Well, this research in neurotheology has refined that to suggest that we are believing machines. Our neurocircuitry wants to construct this idea of something bigger than the limitation of our human experience, that we have embedded in us this inclination to ponder the big questions of life. That does God exist? And where do I fit in the plan of any divine capacity? Or if I am outside the understanding of God as a presence in my life, still big questions exist. What is my life about, and how can I live more successfully? What does it all mean, Alfie? And how do I fit into the scheme of, oh, I don't know, everything. What's my place in the world and in the greater universe? There are various parts in our brain that are actually seemingly constructed and literally disposed to contemplate life beyond our own self, beyond the edges of our physical experience. A particular researcher named Andrew Newberg, across the last actually 30 years, has been pursuing this idea of our brain on God, if you will, mapping where it is in our brain that is impacted by the idea of a consciousness beyond our own, that is positively influenced by spiritual practice as a means of managing this balance between our human intellect and ego, which so readily can go off the rails, and this transcendent divine Christ being that we also are. It's like we have two halves of ourselves working, trying to find a way to work together if we're conscious and aware that we are this divine capacity. You know, this particular system in the brain is the occipital parietal circuitry, and it's got several parts. I'm trying to do 30 years of brain and neuroscience research in 3 minutes, okay? So hang with me in this. There is an area of the brain, the occipital parietal lobe and the circuitry, and it kind of operates as an orientation awareness system for us. It's critical for our ability to move successfully in the world. Literally, it helps us navigate physically without having to consciously think about, when I walk across the space, I want to avoid the thing that's standing here and walk around the plant and not step off the step when I don't mean to. I want to end up where I'm intending to be and, do so safely. This awareness system, orientation awareness system, helped us get out of bed this morning, come to church. And when you got here, you chose a seat in your mind, and you walked over there, and you put your okole down in that chair with some confidence that you would land where you intended, as opposed to perhaps on the floor, because if that system doesn't work, that's what would happen. If your occipital parietal lobes are not functioning with clarity, you can't navigate where you intend to go. It's a very important operational mode. You might kind of think of it, a loose metaphor, it's like your internal gyroscope. It's your echolocation for how you arrive and land where you intend to be. Without that function, we have problems moving about our experience. Now, this is an ongoing operational system, and we don't have to consciously think about it, but it is impacted by spiritual practice. Prayer and meditation dims the function in this section of our brain radically, noticeably, measurably. So it's probably a good thing that most of the time we might be practicing meditation and prayer while we're standing still or sitting, so that we don't have to be in navigation mode. I am now even more impressed with people who practice walking meditation after I know how this system works in our brain. We are able to navigate with ease, and yet this system can also be stilled by the practice of prayer or meditation. And what happens is those neurons in that section of the brain have been measured extensively under prayer and meditation with Franciscan nuns who are in centered prayer practice, deep centered prayer, with Tibetan Buddhism practitioners in deep conscious meditation and awareness. And this part of the brain slows its function so that you can become more aware of the transcendent experience, and this system isn't always operating then at full tilt boogie, being concerned about where you're moving and where you're going and all of that unconscious human processing. No, it stills itself to allow us to have the experience of oneness with God. The result of this 30 years of research and people's comments are that it brings us into meditation and prayer, brings us into the state of feeling our connection to God, knowing our oneness. People often have a little bit of a challenge to verbally express what that's like. If you've had those transcendent moments in prayer and meditation, you know how powerful they are. They can be life-changing. They can happen in the small ahas of life moments when you think, oh my God, I got to clarity today in my meditation about something that has been on my mind and I've been working with, and oh, the answer just arose today. And part of that system that we trust in our metaphysical teachings and in unity practice, it's now confirmed by science. Not that science will confirm whether or not God exists, but only that we can access the deeper recesses of our mind into that quiet space, and what we understand that to be in our practice is connecting with this energy that many of us call God, or connecting with the still place in our consciousness that allows the noise of our constant human intellect operation to just be quiet so that we can be in that intuitive connection with something that is larger. I'm very comfortable calling that something God. But it does not require a belief in God to be connected to this operational zone in our brain and to have the benefit of clarity of thinking, of inspiration arriving in an instant, of an aha moment that can transform a situation in your life or even radically transform your life through this experience of aha and clarity in prayer and meditation. We have this pesky human mind that can sometimes trap us into loops of, oh, the awful could happen, or I'm not able to live in the way that I'd like, or I'm not equipped to live as the divine presence that I might have a glimmer of understanding that I am. And this ability to recess our consciousness so that we have access to this greater idea of the oneness of God and our connection with it is incredibly useful for living a skillful life, no matter what's going on in the circumstances around us. We can live empowered by God in the face of whatever life hands us. We don't have to wait for life to look like a bed of roses and a package all tied up with a pink ribbon. No, we are always in connection with God. Johanna shared our statement of faith in unity, one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. If you choose to live in that energy, I invite you to place your hand on your heart if you are so moved and claim that thought for yourself. There is only one presence, one power. It is active in the universe and it is always active in me. God the good, an infinite living presence and resource for life and wisdom and understanding, compassion and empathy. When we are in touch with this idea of our oneness with God, we actually exhibit more happiness. We may feel more centered and peaceful and calm no matter what we may be facing in our life and no matter what's going on in the world. We can face whatever confronts us with compassion, with empathy, and yet not be in turmoil because of some outer situation that we are confronted with or we are dealing with in our own life. We are enabled to live fully, exquisitely as the Christ presence. One of the most useful ideas for this is being able to let go of the idea that we all probably adopted when we were children. If we were exposed to religious training or upbringing or the idea of God's existence, then we immediately created out of our limited understanding, our child mind, a picture of God. Now, for many of us, maybe that picture is the long beard, the white robe, the big staff, seated on a throne somewhere up on a cloud around us. Children make pictures and determinations about concepts because they don't have abstract thinking yet. So we make, as children, we make concrete images to help our understanding. So if you or any of you are educating children or grandchildren, remember this. They think in images they can understand, and so the concepts of God are perhaps elusive. I don't know about any of the rest of you, but I have spent decades of my life unlearning what I learned in Sunday school so that I could be more, so I could have more of the Christ consciousness available to me at every moment. I used to get to practice this when I would have the joy of spending a lot of time with a nephew of mine who's developmentally disabled. I have been through him in the journey of the death of his father, my brother, his mother years later, his sister, his grandparents way before. And one of the things I was able to help him with when he doesn't have conceptual thinking, is to find a concrete idea in his understanding about death. Not the one that I have, but the one that could bring him to peace. And the gift we have from neuroscience is to understand that whatever childhood ideas we may have arrived at about God, there is this quality of our brain called neuroplasticity that allows us to reframe our thinking. This is how we make transformative experiences in our brain. Those aha moments are actually the brain rewiring itself to a new idea, to a greater truth, to a bigger transcendent experience of our place in the world and our understanding of ourselves as the divine nature of God. I think this neuroscience stuff is fascinating. I went down a lot of rabbit holes this week. I now have 4 of Andrew Newberg's books. And one of the things that excites me the most is this research has led him to understand that spiritual practice can help our brain stay healthy and functional much longer in life. We do not have to succumb to the maturing of our brains as we grow in maturity in our experience. We can use our spiritual practices to sustain our mental capacity, to increase it as well. We think about it so often in our terms of our physical health, that our spiritual practice and the healing energy that we understand in unity can help us heal things that have gone awry in our physical system, help us stay mentally clear. Literally, they can help sustain our brain function much longer into our life. I'm pretty excited about that news, having reached a mature age myself. And I think this idea that we are hardwired for God, for spiritual practice, for questioning our place in the universe and in the world and how we fit in can only serve us extremely well right now. Latrice asked us to be in a beautiful space of consciousness for peace in the world in our global prayer this morning. And perhaps you, like me and others that I am talking with regularly, sometimes become overwhelmed by the news of Russia and the Ukraine and the world's response and the tragedy that's taking place and all of the images that are produced in the news about this situation in our world. It can weigh us down. When we remember this infinite truth that our brain is hardwired to seek for the infinite, to understand the transcendent human experience, we may be able to observe what's taking place around the globe, the tragedy that has come to our family or our friend's life. We can observe that without being overwhelmed by it, when we can stand fully in this idea of our brain always connected with God. Eric Butterworth is very articulate about the power of our mind, a unity minister and an author of several unity-related books. We have this wonderful tool in our human mind, our brain. And it also it's like it's a neutral thing. It will take us down a rabbit hole that is a dark and dangerous neighborhood to be in. We may all know that experience of our mind running amok in the middle of the night or being spun up into some situation that we are processing in our life. But here's the news. Our mind is not thinking us. We are thinking the thoughts driving our life. We actually are the ones in control if we will exert that control. We shape our lives by our own thinking process. And so we come on Sunday morning, we get all inspired and filled up with the music and maybe the message and the prayer. We center in the prayer and we feel so much better when we leave this space. And then somebody cuts us off in traffic on the way to brunch, and whoa, we're all huffy. Because we have just relinquished the control that exists of our thinking. And when we give up control of our thinking, then we just sort of lay ourselves down into the circumstances of the world. The war going on in the Ukraine. The threat of nuclear disaster. A government that seems at times not as functional as we might wish. We can let that run us over like a steamroller, or we can call ourselves to conscious awareness that this wonderful instrument, our brain, our mind, and our thinking process is literally hardwired to the transcendent and infinite. Literally available to the energy of God. It only takes thinking it to make it so. That's what our metaphysics teach us about the power of our thought, that we set our life into motion by what we are thinking. We can't control everything, but we can certainly control our emotions and our thinking and our ability to act from clarity. A little demonstration about the power of your thought. If you want to play this game with me, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. And go to your refrigerator, open the door, and you see a bowl of lovely ripe lemons sitting there. And you think, I got a little something in my throat, and a little bit of lemon would just clear that. Maybe you're coming to church to sing or to speak this morning, and you want to clear the phlegm from your throat. So you take that lemon, it's ice cold, and you cut it open, a little tiny wedge, and you know that lemon juice is going to naturally clear your throat for whatever it is that you need a clear voice for today. And so you take that little wedge, and you put it in your mouth and clamp down your teeth on that nice cold lemon citrus fresh. And you just pucker right up. Does anybody actually feel that? If you are a good visualizer, if you have the power to be connected to the control of your mind, our mind will feel everything as though it's real. And when we understand that, we can shape our ability to be free of the outside circumstances of our life, being in control of our centered presence and our calm energy. It's a practice. It's spiritualizing your own mind to the pattern of God. For in Unity, what we teach is that God is this transcendent energy. There is a divine mind. There is a universal neural net, if you will, and we are part of that circuitry. Our mind is always connected to the energy of God. And when we remember to live in that energy, we are living in greater happiness. We have greater peace of mind. Perhaps our body stays in its healthy state because we haven't disrupted its systems by misusing this energy flow in our body that wants to keep us in the state of our divine, true being. Jesus said, "No one comes to the Father but by me." This chapter in John describes his conversation with the disciples when he was telling them the importance of being connected, knowing they were connected to this energy of God. Now, if we take that statement literally, we might think it means that we have to worship Jesus in order to reach the kingdom of heaven. That would be a misinterpretation of his teaching, because he taught us that this energy of God, the kingdom of heaven is how he often referred to it. It's right here, right now, Always we are in the midst of it. There's no booking a travel plan to go to the kingdom of heaven. You are in it right now. Like a fish swims in the ocean, we are swimming in the milieu of God, always. Our mind can separate us from that truth, but all we have to do is exert that knowing of God to reconnect us again to this capacity to be knowing that we are in the energy of God. Jesus wasn't speaking in a literal sense. He was speaking not as the man Jesus of Nazareth. He was speaking from his own Christ wisdom and inviting all of us into that same truth. Knowing, when we center ourselves in God, when we know that God is right here, always present, then we can flow into whatever life brings us with some sense of equanimity, with a centeredness in the midst of all circumstances, knowing that we are in this loving conspiracy of life in partnership with God, and that when we look beyond the circumstance right in front of us, we can see a greater good. We can hold to that truth no matter what is going on right in front of us. So when I look at the news and I feel troubled, and I'm compassionate for the people whose lives are disrupted and ended and turned into turmoil by this circumstance in the Ukraine, I call that energy of God into my own being, because I know that the only place I have control to create peace is in my own heart and mind. And if I can bring myself to a state of peace, then I have a prayer to offer the world. I have prayerful energy to give to the world. But it starts with this centered knowing that I am always connected to God, and bringing that to the fore, bringing that into my experience, infusing my life with this great truth. I will make apologies to the philosopher Descartes, who said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. I believe what our teachings give us and what this new neural science gives us is credo ergo sum. I believe, therefore I am. I choose to believe that I am the manifest energy of God, and that inner wisdom, that inner peace is always available to me, and I intend that I always connect with that truth when I fall off the rails, when I have spiritual amnesia. Credo ergo sum. I believe in the power of my mind to be connected to the infinite, because I am wired for that experience, and I will seek that experience in the midst of every circumstance of life. Take a deep breath with me. I invite you to choose that experience for yourself, to let fall away the ideas you may have of God that prevent you from this immense resource of light and truth and love. Allow that idea of God mind, divine mind, is the source of your own infinite presence. I am a transcendent being, and all of my human capacities connect me more deeply, more fully to the truth of God, to the light of the infinite. I am a cosmic being living a temporary human existence. And I know in the midst of all that that brings, the truth of God is alive in me. The wisdom of God flows into my mind, and I see my life clearly. I see beyond the circumstance of turmoil and challenge and pain. And I choose to see with clarity, with infinity, with wisdom. And thank you, God, for the grace that moves me in that direction effortlessly, with ease and flow. Credo, ergo sum. Rest in this deep truth of your infinite connection to God in the silence.